when the Honorable Mukhopadhyay sir is here, it will just not be proper to hold anyone back. So a very good afternoon. I welcome on behalf of the Merchant Chamber of Commerce and Industry to this enviable world of personal guarantees and personal guarantors. I don't know where I got this phrase of enviable, but the kind of pain and the kind of pleasure on the other side that I've seen when this personal guarantees topic comes up, I always felt that probably this is the phraseology which will fit in both the circumstances. And hence, we just got this on the leaflet also. I welcome all of you, not only on behalf of the Merchant Chamber of Commerce and Industry, but on the behalf of the other organizations who has joined us today, namely the NCLT Kolkata Bar Association. We have the Association of Corporate Advisors and Executives, and of course we have the IBC Laws. IBC Laws is a website which is floated by a few people, which is specializing in IBC laws alone. I think you must check that out. It's really doing very well. On behalf of everybody, I not only welcome our esteemed panelists, but I also welcome all my precious participants who has joined not only from India, let me tell you, I have a lot of people joined in from even abroad. So thank you all, even in different time zones, you've kept your promises to join in. I'm grateful to all of you. At the outset, I deeply welcome and express our gratitude for the kind presence of Shri S.J. Mukhopadhyay sir, who is the immediate past chairperson of NCLAT. That's, I don't need to use the full form of, or the acronym of NCLAT. Everybody knows it by that name. So thank you so much, Mukhopadhyay sir. It's an honor, and we express our gratitude to you. I also express a deep felt thanks to Partho Sen sir, who's heading the Stressed Assets Division of SBI Kolkata. He's one of the DGMs. That is how he wants him to call himself, one of the DGMs. But I would only tell him that he's a DGM for us, and he's none other than Mr. Partho Sen. I happen to bang on him, and I thank Sumit Binani for that, because I keep on hearing about Partho sir, the kind of drive and zeal that he has. And just a while back, he was mentioning to Mukhopadhyay sir, while we were doing some chit chat, that he was the one who led Steel's resolution. That was the first resolution of the big 12 cases. Partho sir, I also hold the distinction of getting the first resolution in the country. That is Synergies Dure Automotive Limited. Though people tell me not to use that name because it was a taboo name few months back. But thanks to all the NCLT and NCLAT that it has come out clean. So I also take that pleasure to introduce myself by that way itself, not more or not less. And I would also grandly welcome Mr. Piyush Mishra. He's, of course, my friend. I also call him as my guide. Worked on few occasions with AZB and partners, and it's an extreme pleasure to work with AZB. Jitna suna tha inke baare mein, I got them much more than that. So thanks, Piyush, for joining in. And they're also the sponsors of this event, but that's not important. They are also our knowledge partners. So very apt title for AZB and partners. He is joined with Nikita. Nikita, thanks a ton. And none other than Mr. Vivek Gupta, who's the president of the esteemed chamber, that is the Merchants Chamber of Commerce and Industry. That in this chamber is doing a lot of work, not only in the eastern part of the country, but also the northeastern part. And now it's making its strong foothold even in Delhi, which is very, very important. And I must tell you that Vivek ji, as a gung-ho person, I've seen him. He's the one who's led the chamber from the front. He's also the owner of the very prestigious newspaper, which is Sanmarg. So thanks a ton, Vivek ji, for taking out time and joining in. I know how difficult it is for all of us, including you. We have Shri S.M. Gupta ji. He's the chairman, I must say, sorry, he's the president of NCLT Kolkata Bar Association. So this phraseology of president, chairman, it's quite interchangeable. So excuse me for that. S.M. Gupta ji, most hearty welcome to you that you've joined in. So let's start. I think that will be the apt beginning. Nothing else more than that. I'll request S.M. Gupta ji to welcome our dignitaries on behalf of all of us. And Vivek ji, would you like to speak for a minute after Gupta ji? Sure. Yes, S.M. Gupta ji, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mamta. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you, Mamta. My Lord Chief Justice Mukhopadhyay sir, and all the other panelists, Vivek ji, President of Merchant Chamber and former member of Rajya Sabha, very prestigious पोस्ट एज ए एमपी सांसद थे वो, बहुत अच्छे दोस्त भी अपने. सो आई वेलकम एवरीवन टू दिस मीटिंग and the attendance shows the power of merchant chamber. I have held several meetings in merchant chamber for the last more than 25 years, and it's a very lucky chamber. I always say that hall is also very lucky. So likewise, this meeting will have more and more participants. Mamta, just go, wait, people are still coming in. This subject is chosen at the right time, because this is a talk of the town. In the judiciary, in the industrial scenario, and everywhere, because the law has come at such a time. And as Vivekji rightly said in his opening remarks, lot of controversies around, lot of heated exchange and arguments and interpretations are coming. So let us wait how it will actually formulate, how actually it will take the form. And we have the best of the speaker today. So thank you very much, Mamta, for giving us this privilege of joining as a joining partner. And I welcome everybody on behalf of NCLT Kolkata Bar Association. Mamta is also our vice president. I may be president, but she is running the whole thing. She is the energy and synergy behind our association. So thank you very much. And once again, welcome to all of you. Thank you, Mamta.
Thank you so much, Vivek ji, may I start?
जी ममता जी, please.
Thank you.
We should be able to hear all of them. जितना time तो दे सकते हैं उनका लीजिए.
Absolutely. Mukhopadhyay sir,
yes.
The ball is in your court, the bat is in your court, and the goalkeeper, the goalpost, everything is in your court, sir. So over to you, sir.
No, without any court, I am here without any court.
Thank you.
You know, first of all, I'll be saying about the personal guarantor, this word. Somehow or other, every day when the things are changing and understanding of law is going on, I think it is the legislatures are also understanding. First, the legislatures are understanding. The lawyers are trying to understand, the NCLT is trying to understand, the NCLT is trying to understand, and Supreme Court will have to understand. Personal guarantor, what was not there in section 3? Creditor. The personal guarantor was not there. It was there an individual, firm and an individual. Later on in section 2, section 2, subsection E, it added the provision of this code shall apply to the personal guarantors to the corporate debtor. So provision of this code was never applied to this. Section 2 said it was not there. It was individual only, partnership firm and individual. But that has been amended recently, and they say the code will be applicable to the personal guarantors also, and firm has been separately made. That is section 2E. And this 2E has been given effect recently by notification dated 15th November 2019 with effect from 1st December 2019. So when the original code was framed, this personal guarantor word was there in section 5. That is with regard to corporate insolvency resolution process, but this code will apply was not written. So legislature subsequently amended it and actually given effect from 1st of December 2019, this section 2E. Now if you go to personal guarantor, the definition was there from the very beginning in section 5, subsection 22. Section 5, subsection 22 is with regard to the part 2, which relates to corporate insolvency resolution process. Whereas the part 3 was for the individual and the firm. Personal guarantor was not there, but in corporate insolvency resolution process in chapter 3, section 5, subsection 22, the meaning of personal guarantor was there since very beginning, which means an individual who has the surety in the contract of guarantee to a corporate debtor. So this definition, then the various problems started with. The question was whether personal guarantor can be targeted or not. Then the complication came after different judgment of the NCLAT and the NCLAT and the Honorable Supreme Court. Because still it is conflicting. I'll be showing, because I'll have to, usual in my court I used to argue on behalf of both the sides. Now two sides are here, like Mr. Partho Sen, who is the DGM of the stress asset. He wants a recovery. And Sanmarg, Mr. Vivek Gupta, he wants that, no, why should we pay? A personal guarantor. You are there in corporate debtor, you get it everything from the corporate debtor. NCLAT judgment with regard to corporate guarantor said, for same claim you cannot trigger the other corporate guarantor. That judgment still holds good. It is challenged in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court has not stayed it, but ordered status quo in that case. Subsequently, what happened, now when this section has been given, before that, I'll be going to section 6. Section 6, if you look into corporate insolvency resolution process, where any corporate debtor commits a default, a financial creditor or operational creditor or corporate debtor itself may initiate corporate insolvency resolution process in respect to such a in the manner as provided under this chapter. So chapter 2, which includes 7, 9 and 10 is not applicable to the personal guarantor. Am I clear? Am I clear to you?
Yes, sir.
So chapter 2, section 7, 9 and 10 only relates to initiation of corporate insolvency resolution process against a corporate debtor, corporate person, not a personal guarantor. So this is not applicable. But in section 9, in section 60, if you go, that was which has also come into force earlier. In section 60, you will find that the NCLT is the adjudicating authority for the purpose of subsection 1. The adjudicating authority in relating to insolvency resolution and liquidation for corporate persons, including debtors and personal guarantor. This has been added later on. Thereof shall be National Company Law Tribunal having territorial jurisdiction over place where the registered office of the corporate person. So NCLT is the competent body, the tribunal, not the debt recovery tribunal, which is for part 3. For individual, there is a part 3, which has total of which has not been given, but now some of them have been given effect, and therefore this conflict. The subsection 2 says, without prejudice to subsection 1, notwithstanding anything to the contrary contained in this code, where a corporate insolvency resolution process or liquidation proceeding of a corporate debtor is pending before the National Company Law Tribunal, an application relating to insolvency resolution or liquidation or bankruptcy or corporate guarantor or personal guarantor, as the case may be, of such corporation shall be filed before such a National Company Law Tribunal. So they will have to file there. But under which provision they will file? Section 7 was not applicable. Section 9 was not applicable. Section 10 was not applicable. So subsection 3 said any insolvency resolution process or liquidation or bankruptcy proceeding of a corporate guarantor or personal guarantor, as the case may be, pending in any court or tribunal shall stand transferred. So if DRT would have come or any other suit would have been filed, so that would have been transferred against this personal guarantor. Now, National Company Law Tribunal vested with all power of the Debt Recovery Tribunal. Now, this power was vested with the as under Part 3. But Part 3 was never given effect. Part 3 was not given effect, and the judgment came one after another. The judgment of the Supreme Court all the time said that it will not be applicable to the guarantors, and some judgment says it will be applicable to the personal guarantor also. I'll be referring to some of the judgment, and you can take notice of the paragraph which I may quote from Manu. If I don't have it with SCC online, you can find out. That is with regard to the personal guarantor. Just a minute.
Sure, sir. Please
Now,
take
first is State Bank of India versus B.V. Ramakrishnan. This case was decided on 14th August 2019 and said a plain reading of this section therefore leads to the conclusion that moratorium referred to in section 14 can have no manner in application to the personal guarantor of a corporate debtor. So moratorium under section 14 against a corporate debtor will not be applicable to a personal guarantor, because that is chapter 2, which is not applicable. Then in the said paragraph 17 of the judgment in Manu, which I will be referring, the net result is this, that so far as individual personal guarantors are concerned, they will continue to be proceeded against under the aforesaid 2 Insolvency Act and Code. That means the Insolvency Act of 1909 and Provincial Act of 1920. They said they will proceed against them, continue proceeding against them under the aforesaid 2 Insolvency under so and so. Indeed, by a press release dated 28th of August 2017, Government of India through Ministry of Finance cautioned that section 243 of the code, which provides for the repeal of the said enactment, has not been notified till date. It is for this reason, paragraph 20 of the judgment, it is for the said reason, the subsection 2 of section 60 speaks of an application relating to bankruptcy of a personal guarantor. Please understand, bankruptcy of the, so now that has been changed. The word, instead of a bankruptcy, they have used the word in subsection 2 of section 6, corporate insolvency resolution process or corporate proceeding of the corporate debtor. The insolvency resolution or liquidation or bankruptcy of the corporate guarantor or personal guarantor. Why I am highlighting this? That the judgment which says that it will not be applicable, section 14 will not be applicable, and then referring to subsection 2 of section 60 as it was, they said it will be have to file under the old act. The scheme of section 60 subsection 2 and 3 is thus clear that the moment there is a proceeding against the corporate debtor, penalty under 2016 code, any bankruptcy proceeding against individual personal guarantor, if already initiated before the proceeding against the corporate debtor, be transferred. So this judgment is still holding good. Therefore, the question is whether what is in corporate insolvency resolution process. Second word is insolvency resolution process, and third word is bankruptcy. So we'll have to now divide in three parts. One is corporate insolvency resolution process, another is insolvency resolution process, and third is bankruptcy. Now why I am saying, now by the notification of 15th of November 2019, which has come into effect from 1st of December 2019, section 78, 79, section 129, 94 to 187, all of chapter 3 has been given effect, apart from the other certain provisions like section clause G of 239, then section 249, they have been given effect. Now, if you look into the chapter 3, part 3, part 3 has also two chapters. Part 3 is, part 3 it relates to the individual. Now, if you look into part 3, then you will find insolvency and bankruptcy for individual and firm. Now, there if you see which has been given effect is insolvency resolution process. It is chapter 3 of part 2, section 94, which has now been given effect. A debtor includes, who commits a default may apply either personally or through insolvency resolution process by submitting an application. That is like section 10. Then 95 says application by creditor to initiate insolvency resolution process. The word corporate insolvency resolution process is not there, mind it. Corporate insolvency resolution process is not there, which is in part 2 against the corporate debtor. So a creditor may apply either by himself. Here creditor meaning is common in part 1, section 3, subsection 10. And there a creditor may apply either by himself or jointly with other creditors as through resolution professional to the adjudicating authority. So application will be through the resolution professional to the adjudicating authority for initiating an insolvency resolution process under this section by submitting an application. Now I am asking a question for me, how he can apply through a resolution professional if there is no resolution professional appointed under part 2, section 7 or 9 or 10. How a creditor can individually file an application through a resolution professional? Now, is it of his choice? If he chooses and somebody says that he will file because power of interim moratorium is there under section 96. The creditor may apply under subsection 1 relation to any partnership debt owed to him initiating the insolvency resolution process against one or more partners, not applicable. Where application has been made against one of the partner, this is also not applicable. So creditors also provide. Now, if I look into this, then this is all relating to partner and firm. Now, under which provision they will be applying is a question. Then, if you look into it, submission, section 19, submission of a report by the resolution professional. The resolution professional shall examine the application referred to section 94 or section 95. You know, the appointment of section resolution professional is 97. If the application under section 94 or 95 is filed through a resolution professional, the adjudicating authority direct the board within the days of the date of the application to confirm that there is no proceeding, disciplinary proceeding is pending. So it is to be filed through the resolution professional. And submission of a report by resolution professional, he will say that whether to initiate a proceeding or not. Just look into the matter. The resolution professional I will engage, but section 94 do not talk of a personal guarantor which relates to creditor. 94 is default 194.1. 94 is about the debtor. And 95 is with regard to creditor, but a creditor may apply through so and so initiated as insolvency under this section by submitting an application. A creditor may apply under subsection 1 in relation to any partnership debt owed to him for initiating so and so, and where an application has been made against one of the partner of the firm. Then for subsection 4, an application under section 1 shall be accompanied by so and so. So 94 and 95 and corresponding in 97, appointment of 90, these are relating to resolution plan. I don't know how it will be made applicable to the personal guarantor for initiating against personal guarantor, under which provision a creditor will apply. So next is submission of a report by section 99, which has been given effect. Then after that, admission or rejection of application. So all this, when I was going through, I was finding that it is with regard to, mostly with regard to the partnership firm and individual. Personal guarantor word is not there. Now question will be that public notice, claim, etc., that can it be initiated individually against a personal guarantor? Now under which provision individually it will be initiated? Parliament thought, now or central government thought, that will give effect to the notification of 15th November, and they are trying personal guarantor, we have given effect to section 2E. Very good. Section 2E we have given that code will be applicable to the personal guarantor, but personal guarantor falls under the definition of chapter part 2, that is with regard to corporate insolvency resolution process, not with regard to part 3. Am I clear? Therefore, all the provision of part 3, how that can be made applicable, except under subsection 5, the power of DRT, the same power is vested. But can a creditor file an individual application against a personal guarantor, then under which provision? This is a question I am asking me for the answer by you. Because section 94 I was reading, it is about the debtor. Section 95, which has been given effect, is with regard to creditor but of a partnership firm. 96, 99, then 96 is appointment of resolution professional. 98 is replacement of resolution professional. 99 is report submitted. So up to section 187, when I was going through, I could not get, except now I'll be coming to section 129. Section 129, which has been given effect, statement of financial position, registration of claim, preparation of list, public notice, effect of bankruptcy order. Now these are all related to bankruptcy. Please understand, these are not related to corporate insolvency resolution process or insolvency resolution process. Against a personal guarantor, there cannot be a corporate insolvency resolution process. Against the personal guarantor, there can be an insolvency resolution process. Against a personal guarantor, there cannot be a bankruptcy. Am I clear? So three sentences are different. Corporate insolvency resolution process, where section 5 has been talking of personal guarantor, and section 60 talks of personal guarantor, but it do not talk of that under which law it is to be initiated. So according to me, the personal guarantor against, if somebody has filed somewhere, like a tribunal like DRT, or in a suit, then subsection 60 will come into play. They will to be heard by both, to be heard by the NCLT. Procedure of the DRT as given in the second part, part 3, that is to be followed. Am I clear? So when they talk of subsection 1 of section 60, they say, again I am repeating it, that subsection 1 of section 60 talks of NCLT will be the adjudicating authority for personal guarantor also. But subsection 2 says both are to be heard together. 3 says one is to be transferred, but none of the provision stipulates triggering. Am I clear? Section 7, 9, 10 are triggering section, but there is no provision to trigger against a personal guarantor. This is the first question to be decided by NCLT, that under which provision it is to be triggered. And if they have given effect to section 94 to 187, I have gone through that this section relates to not personal guarantor, but against the firm or individual. It do not talk of personal guarantor. So according to me, I am not coming to the conclusion that it is a subject to be noticed that can the NCLT initiate a proceeding independently against the corporate personal guarantor. I can understand personal guarantor is section 19 under the DRT Act is pending. That DRT Act against the personal guarantor will stand transferred and to be heard along with the main one, but not a individual power to the NCLT to trigger. Am I clear to you?
Sir, yes, we are getting it. Sir, could you please explain once again, sir, this application section 2E.
2E says that this code will be applicable.
Absolutely, the whole code is applicable.
Code will be applicable from all right. code will be applicable, then 60 will be also applicable
Yes, right.
for personal guarantor.
Yes.
Now, under which provision they will straight away move before the NCLT?
94.
94, read 94, read 94.
A debtor who commits a default.
A debtor, I'm talking of the creditor.
Yes.
95.
95.
Come to 95, read it along with me.
A creditor may apply either by himself. So SBI may apply either by itself or jointly with other banks or through a RP to the adjudicating authority for initiating an insolvency resolution process. So it's not saying corporate.
Yes.
Initiating an insolvency resolution process under this section.
Under this section.
Yes, under this section.
It do not talk of personal guarantor. Personal guarantor is in chapter 2, subsection 5. 5 subsection 2 is the personal guarantor of a corporate debtor.
Sir, 1 minute, sir.
Section 5, subsection 222.
Yes, that I've read, sir. 1 minute.
Now, what is there?
Personal guarantor means an individual okay, who is the surety in a contract of guarantee to a corporate debtor.
Corporate debtor. So this 95 do not give a power to initiate against the personal guarantor. They say creditor. Now, creditor meaning you go to the meaning of creditor.
Yes, sir.
Section 10(3)(10).
Yes, sir. Creditor means any person to whom a debt is owed and includes a FC, OC, a secured creditor, an unsecured creditor, and a decree holder.
Do not talk of personal guarantor. And section 95 is talking of creditor.
No, but to whom a debt is owed. To whom a debt is owed.
You see,
Okay.
Creditor is bank. But triggering against personal guarantor, under which provision the application is to be filed? I am asking this question.
Yes, I understood.
Again will not applicable, 9 will not be applicable, and 10 will not be applicable. That is the reason subsection 2 says, if it is to be filed now, you file before this. So section 19, section 19 of the DRT Act, if I file against the personal guarantor, I will not file there. Now I will be filing here. Am I clear to you?
Yes, sir.
Am I clear? Now, if I file a section 19 there or a suit there, suit before any court against the personal guarantor, therefore subsection 3 says it should be transferred. They should be heard jointly. There is no triggering section directly before the NCLT. It is to be under section 19 of the DRT Act. One may say I am filing and I am filing against this and you are my tribunal. Am I clear to you? So first I confused it. I confused it that you can't file under this provision. This code will be applicable, but under this code it cannot be filed. So any application straight away filed that I have recovered against X, now all the applications are filed, they are talking of 2E. They are talking of 94. Triggering power has not been vested under the ISL Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. There cannot be a bankruptcy of individual. In a corporate insolvency, it is a resolution process. So bankruptcy cannot be there. Bankruptcy is of an individual. But for personal guarantor, though he is an individual also, it is a corporate, not a corporate insolvency resolution process. It is an insolvency resolution process. Now, let me read the last judgment of the Supreme Court, the Committee of Creditors. Now, Committee of Creditors, when they are talking of, in their judgment, they have made again clear. This is the latest judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court. And Supreme Court, while referring to it,
But do give us the citation also, sir.
Citation you will have to find out. I am talking of Committee of Creditors of SR Steel versus Satish Kumar Gupta.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
All right. Now there, what is there? Paragraph, direct judgment which I am reading, paragraph 65 onwards I am reading. See, Rohatgi, learned senior advocate, appearing on behalf of Prashant Ruiya, also pointed out section 11(1)(g) of the resolution plan, in which it stated as follows. We are informed by the learned senior counsel that personal guarantees of the promoter group have been invoked and a legal proceeding in respect thereof are pending. It has been pointed out to us that Sri Prashant Ruiya and other members of the promoter group who are guarantors are not parties to the resolution plan submitted by RCL and Mittal. Hence, the resolution plan cannot bind them to take away rights of subrogation which may have an order to pay amounts guaranteed by them in pending legal proceeding. Then such section, paragraph 66 says, section 31 within bracket 1 of the code makes it clear that once a resolution plan is approved by Committee of Creditors, it shall be binding on all stakeholders, including guarantors. This is for the reason that this provision ensures that successful resolution applicant starts running the business of the corporate debtor on a fresh slate, as it were. State Bank of India versus V. Ramakrishnan, 2018 9 scale. This court, relying on section 31 of the court, held section 31 of the Act was also strongly relied upon by the respondents. This section only states that once a resolution plan as approved by the Committee of Creditors takes effect, it shall be binding on the corporate debtors as well as the guarantors. This is the reason that otherwise under section 133 of the Indian Contract Act 1872, any change made to the debt owed by corporate debtor without the surety's consent would relieve the guarantor from payment. Section 31(1) in fact makes it clear that guarantor cannot escape payment, as the resolution plan which has been approved may well include provision as to payment to be made by such guarantor. This is perhaps the reason that Annexure VIE of Form 6 contained in the Rules and Regulation 36(2) referred to above required information as to the personal guarantees that have been given. Am I clear? In relation to debt of the corporate debtor. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Therefore, in the resolution plan, they will have to club them. All guarantors, including personal guarantor, which has been stated over there. The resolution plan, you do not, it must be there as per regulation. They say that personal guarantors are also to be with intimation given. So resolution plan, if includes, then it is binding on of them. Then if it is not binding, if you do not take, in spite of knowing, you initiate against the corporate debtor, don't impede them or take away their right, as has been held by the Honorable Supreme Court that under 31(1), while passing the order, it is binding on all the guarantors, and if they try to take away on it, Contract Act will not available. This will be applicable. So question was Indian Contract Act. This has been answered. So you missed the bus. You missed the bus, leave the guarantors, personal guarantors, and later on you trigger. How you can trigger, under which provision? Because principal borrower has been relieved. You had the opportunity. So for the judgment of the NCLAT will now come into play, that for the same claim, for the same amount, you cannot trigger. So if this has been taken away, triggered, how section 19 will be filed thereafter? If section 19 is pending, one may say, club together, the amount will be more. The amount of the corporate debtor is 4,000 crore, personal guarantor is 1,000 crore, so total will be 5,000 crore, and therefore we want a division like this. And that is the finality of the judgment. It has been reiterated in the Ramakrishna, has been reiterated in the Committee of Creditors. Now this judgment, if you look into, and now if you look into the provision of 94, 95, 99 onwards, the mischief or mistake, they think creditor means financial creditors, and they think that they can file against a personal guarantor. No, subsection 2 talks of it is against a partnership form. Subsection 2 of section 95. One or other partner. And in fact, that is the reason in chapter 3, personal guarantor word has not been used in the definition. That has been used in the chapter 2, part 2. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
So, if some application is pending before the DRT under section 19 against the personal guarantor, you bring it here. Try together. If you want to file a section 19, file here. But together with that case, or even without finding, as the regulation says that you name the creditors. So guarantor's right can be taken away by resolution applicant. That is the judgment approved by the Supreme Court, Ramakrishna, paragraph 22, and that is of scale 2018, volume 9, scale, page 97, paragraph 22, which has been taken into account in the paragraph 65, 66 before me, in the Committee of Creditors, which is the latest judgment on the personal guarantor. So once, according to me, once in a corporate insolvency resolution process, if you want insolvency resolution process against the personal guarantor, which is a matter of a chapter 2, you do it as per 60. You file before it under the other provision, section 9, 19, before the TRT, club it together, or RP has given you detail. For example, RCL and Mittal could have taken them. Now, RCL and Mittal, after taking the plan, if they have left the personal guarantor, their rights have not been taken away, that they will have to pay along with me. Corporate debtor. Corporate debtor, he is to pay along with me. Let him pay on my behalf. So both can be clubbed together. But no individual can be triggered except under section 19 of the DRT. That too before that court, and to be clubbed together. Now, those who have missed the bus have missed the bus. Now, they will have to give a fresh thought to it. Mere giving effect to section 94 to section 187 in no manner will be beneficial, as bankruptcy is not applicable and that do not relate to personal guarantor, it is individual and the firm. Part 3 relates to individual and firm, not the personal guarantor. Personal guarantor was there under chapter part 2, section 522 was not given effect till this 2E has been given effect. So now personal guarantor can be taken in. Even without that, Ramakrishna said, yes, you can take away the right under the same resolution plan. I think I've done my job. Now, I may be wrong, but leave the question for the next generation to go for thought process. Apply your mind that how to trigger, how not to trigger, when to answer, when not to answer. Be cautious at the time of filing of the resolution plan. Be cautious, should I implead or not to implead? Be cautious whether I should trigger or not to trigger. Because I am a creditor. Creditor definition is common. And creditor do not include a personal guarantor. Debtor do not include. Who is debtor? Now debtor is, personal guarantor is in chapter 2. Now debtor, you will read the definition of debtor is there. There is no debtor definition. Am I clear? Debtor definition is there. Default definition is there. Debtor definition is not there. So I have taken much of your time.
Oh, sir, it's an eye-opening stuff that we learned actually. Which means, sir, you are saying that personal guarantors to corporate debtors is only for the limited purpose of transferring that file to NCLT.
No, I am saying three things.
Okay.
One, resolution applicant will have to keep in mind, as per the judgment of Ramakrishnan, whether I will take them in my fold. Because as per regulation 36(2), referred to above, the required information as a personal guarantee that has been given in relation to debt of the corporate debtor. So it has been given in the information memorandum as per regulation. So if you want, the Ramakrishna says you can add in your resolution plan, and the personal guarantor cannot take advantage of the Indian Contract Act. So your question was inter-Indian contract, that has been answered. This Ruia was a personal guarantor.
Right.
His personal guarantee was added. So therefore, they said, no, you don't have a right. They can add it. So add there. Or if you have initiated, same creditor can also file an application under section 9 and say tag together. But suppose RCL Mittal has gone or Binani Cement has gone. Now if they want to file an application, I think the answer will be negative, because you don't have any provision where you will go. Section 19 you can't go because you have settled against the principal borrower. Section 19 cannot be against the individual guarantor without the borrower being there. Am I clear? So look from a different angle. The thought process that 94 will be applicable, 95 will be applicable, 96, 97, I said no. that is only for individual. Part 3 is for individual. Part 3 is for farm, and all these things talk of farm or in bankruptcy for individual. Part 2 talks of the personal guarantor. Part 2 talks of 60, subsection 2, etc. Part 2 is clear that personal guarantor initiation was not permitted, now permitted. So you can initiate, and if you file here, not there. If you file there, then it is to be transferred. Otherwise, the resolution applicant will be vigilant. Committee of creditors, the triggering time, one should be vigilant. Should I file against both? Personal guarantor also, corporate guarantor also. So tag together, the asset value will go. So guarantor includes both the corporate guarantor and the personal guarantor as per section 31(1).
Yes.
It will be binding on them. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and I hope and best of the success of this participation of 391 candidates at present. I hope you will apply your mind, you will argue before the court, and let the court, NCLT and NCLAT, and I hope the Honorable Supreme Court, they should again reiterate that this law has already stand settled, nothing to be settled. According to me, law is there, judgment is there, last judgment talks of it, and chapter makes it clear, particularly part 2, part 1, 2E given effect means you can file here under this code. Part 2E given effect means you can file under this code. So 60 door open. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
And 7, 9, etc. not permissible. So only it can be permissible under that
19.
section 19,
Of
but
the
along with the principal borrower.
Yes.
If you trigger against a guarantor, then how personal guarantee will come? You understand?
Yes,
You
sir.
do not choose to trigger against the principal borrower. You trigger against a corporate guarantor. Then corporate guarantor's personal guarantee is not the personal guarantor. Am I clear?
Yes.
So, whom against they will be triggering? Sometimes what they do, they look into the fact hen. Fact hen is corporate debtor, so we'll trigger him. The guarantor, corporate guarantor. Once you trigger against a corporate debtor, personal guarantor is not the personal guarantor of the corporate debtor.
Yes.
Once you trigger against the principal borrower, section 19 can be triggered. Otherwise, there is no triggering provision.
Yeah. Charging
Thank you.
sector. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Should I take leave?
Mukhopadhyay, sir, just one query.
Yes.
If the company goes into liquidation, that means it is not in CRP, it has gone into liquidation. So while it is in liquidation, I understand there is no triggering section, but can the DRT provision under section 19 be still invoked?
No. Read is section 60. Section 60, if you read, that is the basic thing.
Yes, sir. It doesn't talk about liquidation at all, sir.
It is talking about insolvency, you know, adjudicating authority for corporate person, you know, this is application to insolvency resolution, all liquidation and bankruptcy that has been added now.
Okay.
Liquidation has been added now. Therefore, section 2 and 3, again that question will come.
Yeah.
Now liquidation, you know, liquidation if you file, previously 391, etc. or 433, whatever they used to file. Now it stands transferred to NCLT.
Yes.
So in any case, that liquidation is to be heard by the NCLT. So can there be a liquidation of a personal guarantor Am I clear? He's an individual. Resolution process can be against him. There cannot be, he can be declared as a bankrupt. He can be declared to be a bankrupt, not a liquidation. Liquidation is of a company. Liquidation is not of an individual. So, though they have said liquidation, but personal guarantors do not come in because they cannot be liquidated. They can be declared bankrupt. Up to resolution process, yes, they will be part to the resolution process. But after failure of the resolution process, no, bankrupt, not liquidated.
Thank you. Thank you. In a seminar, I've always, understood from my days when I started understanding things that it is only when you go with a questioning mind and a soul which is full of more questions and, it's intrigued to know more. That is when it is said that a speaker, I can't say about Mukhopadhyay, sir, pardon me for that, but that is when it is said that the organization which is conducting the programs, it is actually a success. I think you have left us with the thought that whether the glass is half full or half empty, whether there are the triggering sections. I think Partha sir is really going to have a tough night tonight. He's just going to think more as to what he has to do.
No, he has. I have given him the tips.
Yes, you have.
That go for section 19, trigger it. I have given him the tips that in the resolution plan, add it.
Yes.
Take away them, eat them. Who are the personal guarantors? These director, promoter, etc. Ruia stand was there. I am a personal guarantor. You can't do it. Section 2E was not given effect. Still they said, no, in a resolution plan, you can add it. All guarantors, it will be binding on you also. Because 36, that 36(2), that talks of you, personal guarantor also. So you are also bound by it. So stress asset will be saying the RP that take them also. Let us see that best resolution plan when they will be looking into the viability and feasibility of a resolution plan. As a stress asset company, he will be in committee of creditors. So he will try to look into which is a more viable. Have they taken them in the fold or they have not taken them in the fold? So added, not added. Am I clear to him? This is his way of looking. But Sanmark Mr. Vivek Gupta, his way of looking will be trigger me. Without trigger, if you triggered against the corporate guarantor, I go, you can't trigger against me. Bring the principal borrower first. And if you settle there, if you are satisfied with their money, in place of 100 rupees, you have taken 50. How I remain a guarantor? Because you have become a corporate debtor. Now, after the resolution plan, the resolution applicant is the corporate debtor. Now, they cannot remain a personal guarantor to these corporate debtors. Am I clear to you? The chance of after the approval of the plan, they miss the bus. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. You've touched upon so many sections of the Contract Act also. And as sir, beautifully, you've explained us the provisions pretty well. Sitting with you with the book is a real pleasure, sir. Thank you so much. I think words are falling short to express the gratitude that you have given so much of your time. I know the kind of schedule that you had. In spite of it, Mukhopadhyay sir, technology is your tamed tiger, I must say that, because you've used it beautifully, without a hindrance.
Actually, time was not the factor for me, but my son-in-law, my daughter, and the whole family is suffering from COVID. So my mind is with them.
In spite of that.
So I am insolvent in thought process today. So wish you best of the success.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Wish
I must say to the participants that in spite of that, Mukhopadhyay sir actually volunteered that no, it's a commitment and he'll be here. So that's not insolvency, sir. It's much, much above that. Thank you so much, sir. Sir,
and
if you,
very speedy recovery, sir, to family.
yeah,
Thank you.
I'm sure
Thank
all
you.
you well, sir.
Thank you very much.
thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Take care.
Bye-bye, sir. So, Partha sir, I'm sure our heads are rotating and our minds are revolving. So, it's amazing, amazing. And I request you and Piyush to take this thread forward. Vivekji, I can see that you feel a little relieved after hearing what Mukhopadhyay sir said. But believe you me, I think he's given us more stress than relief, because Partha sir has got some great ammunitions, which is easier. Anyway, so Partha sir and Piyush, let's get going. And
Sure. I mean, I was looking at the queries while, you know, of course, sir has gone into the entire ambit of it.
yeah,
What I'll do is maybe it's a good idea to, you know, because some questions seems to be about understanding how the process works. So quickly, I mean, just from a pure perspective of how the provisions are as of now and how it is panning out. Of course, the matter is sub judice, it's evolving law. We will learn bits and parts of it. But I think it's a good idea to just have a 5-minute recap of the process per se. So effectively,
Partha sir, we'll do that, and then we'll, Partha sir,
Yes,
that's
yes.
okay?
Absolutely
Yeah.
okay.
Sure, Piyush.
and Mamta and Partha sir, please feel free to add because I'll just quickly give a 5-minute summary and, you know, we can move forward.
Yes, please go ahead.
Nikita, if you have the PowerPoint, you can place it. Share screen is activated.
Let me just try if I can do it.
Yeah, or else if you tell me, I'll do that. Yes, we can see.
Can you see the screen in terms of, sorry, I'm just trying to fix my screen. I'm unable to figure out. Do we have the quick details? So I'll just quickly run through the idea. In effect, IBC notifications have come giving part of, you know, the whole personal insolvency process into force, which itself, you know, has also become a contentious issue. In effect, the corporate debtors, the regime is pretty well, you know, entrenched right now. Still some issues being sorted out, but by and large, it has evolved well. I think as an add-on to it, the personal guarantor to corporate debtors, the insolvency provisions relating to those have been notified, and the corresponding regulations also have been notified. Ultimately, so it applies only to a debtor who is a personal guarantor in respect of which guarantee has been invoked and remains unpaid. So the key, unlike a normal scenario, is it has to be invoked and it has to remain unpaid. So this happened just last year. And purely if you look at the timelines quickly, so there is a default. An application is filed to NCLT or DRT. But once you file that,
we go a little slow because people will like to know this.
Sure.
Yeah.
So typically under section 94 and 95, a filing is done. It can be done by the guarantor himself. It's individual insolvency, or it can be done by a creditor. And again, it gives an option that creditor can do it by himself or through a resolution professional. There are prescribed forms. And when I go into the differences, I'll go into part of that. But in effect, all that happens is in prescribed forms, a notice is given, unlike the normal corporate insolvency process, a notice is given for the debt. And if it remains unpaid and the guarantee has been invoked, then the matter can be taken up in court. Now, suppose default, an application is filed. The moment an application is filed, an interim moratorium comes into play. Now, you have to remember that the idea of the code was to get it all done in a time-bound manner. So far, we have to be mindful of the fact that at least as far as corporate debtor is concerned, the period of admission after filing of application, the period of admission has been held to be directory and not mandatory. So this moratorium technically was supposed to be for a short period under the code, but could be for a longer period depending on when it actually gets admitted. Now, NCLT refers the particular RP to board. It can happen in two ways. One, it either says a resolution professional is applied, tell and confirm no disciplinary proceedings are pending, or it can say no RP, confirm the appointment of this particular RP, or you tell me which RP to appoint. So NCLT and IBBI, in that sense, liaison, and ultimately an RP is appointed or confirmed as the case may be. Now, unlike a normal case, after this, an RP report is submitted and admission happens and a formal moratorium takes place. The moment a formal moratorium takes place and it is admitted, public notice for creditor claim will go in. A preparation of creditor list will be done by the RP. And now here is the key difference. A repayment plan and RP report will be submitted, which will be subject to NCLT approval. Or he will say that, I need a creditor committee and do a voting by creditor committee. Please remember, the constitution of a creditor committee per se is not mandatory. One. So, but of course the RP has to give a reasons in writing. Two, the committee of creditors consists of, there is no distinction of financial and operational creditors as far as the committee of creditors is concerned in this case. Look, the idea is there is a fundamental difference from a CIRP process simply because of the fact that it's a personal guarantee process. So in a personal guarantee, the process has to be far smaller. The idea is there will be no resolution plan of a third party stepping in. You can't step into the debt of a party. It's by the same party, which is basically, in a way, restructuring the debt, if you like, how a normal restructuring takes place. But this is a resolution plan by the same party in consultation with the RP. And if a COC is constituted, approved by the COC. And this is the process on the slide that you say, a approved repayment plan is submitted to NCLT if the COC is in place. Otherwise, it is directly submitted by the RP. And then NCLT gives a decision on it. And then RP ensures implementation of the plan. And once the plan is fully implemented, a discharge order is applied for by the RP. So during this entire period, the RP is one, responsible for formulation of the plan, responsible for supervision of the implementation of the plan, and finally to get a discharge order. That's broadly how it works, which is very different from how a normal corporate insolvency would work. Key differences, if you say, is in the RP appointment process. The financial creditor just files it. There is no question of an IRP, RP being confirmed by COC and all, because there could potentially be no COC. Issuance of demand notice by creditors. There is a certain set that is excluded. You would recall in CPC also, there are certain exclusions, but these are slightly different kind of exclusions where they say for certain kinds of debt, you cannot file it. And there are certain excluded assets also, which are not subject to attachment. The trigger thresholds are different. I think the guarantee amount is fairly low for which you can invoke it. Interim moratorium is a new addition, which is not seen in a corporate debtor context. Eligibility of RP is slightly different in the sense a corporate debtor RP cannot be the RP for the personal guarantor for the same corporate debtor also. It will be perceived as a conflict of interest. Repayment plan is prepared by the debtor in consultation with the RP. This is the key difference. It's the debtor who is himself preparing it with the RP. And of course, RP forms for the discharge of the debt upon implementation of the plan. I think that's the broad rubric that I just wanted to give that context.
Yeah, that was good. And I think what you're telling about the threshold is, I think it's 1,000 rupees.
1,000 rupees, yes.
So low, Partha sir.
Yes.
Why is it 1,000 rupees? It is so less. We should have gone to the government and told them that 1,000 rupees is. So what will happen? DRTs will now get flooded. Anyways, DRT is.
The practical commercial sense will come into play. There's no point in spending 10,000 rupees for a 1,000 rupee debt. So obviously, we will look at the commercial aspect also and practical aspect also.
Partha sir, what is your take? Mishra ji, Piyush has kind of laid down the law for us.
Yeah.
So Partha sir has given us the contours. So what is the take that as a banker you wish to take or you have been taking? Over to you, sir.
Yeah. So before I start, I will just like to give a disclaimer that the views which I am expressing are my personal views and not necessarily of my organization. And I am answering all these clarifications or whatever in my personal capacity only, not as the from my organization point of view. So I make it very clear. Now this personal guarantee had been, guarantors has been in vogue for quite a long time. And the lenders started insisting on to ensure that there is significant stake of the promoters into the business, and the promoters, for whatever reasons, to prove their stake or prove that they are thoroughly into the business, have came and given their personal guarantee, sometimes along with mortgage of assets or pledge of assets, sometimes without it. And the lenders preferred that because the lenders thought that personal guarantee will ensure that the promoter would be there till the last mile. But now after this CIRP process and resolution happening under CIRP process, so the promoters are having a thought that once this date of the corporate debtor is getting settled, so ideally they should be left out of this entire aspect. But it needs to be taken into consideration that they had agreed to repay an entire amount of debt in majority cases, and in some cases a part of the debt. They had already agreed to guarantee that. So the idea is, if the corporate debtor fails to repay some portion of the debt, then they will step in and make good that amount. Now this was the basic understanding under which these promoters, whosoever personal guarantors, have come and given their personal guarantee. So that thing stays, that thing cannot go away. Because so now the personal guarantors or people who are proposing to be personal guarantors have to be very clear about that they'll still be held liable if some amount of the debt is still remains unpaid by even after recovery or resolution of the corporate debtor. So that is very important and number one. Now another question we come across is that this amount of debt is beyond my means, beyond my net worth. So how can I go and pay this? That is a valid question, that how they are expected to pay in crores or in thousands of crores when they are not having assets of that size. So then the idea is that what is built up in this IBC is that they should try their best and then declare themselves bankrupt. Once they declare themselves bankrupt, they are out of this net and they can start afresh. And these are being followed in the Western world very frequently, where people can come declare themselves bankrupt, that look, I am ought to pay, but I cannot pay. I mean, whatever I am having, I am ready to pay, excepting those excluded assets and for subsistence and a house for staying and all that. So everything else I am ready to pay and I declare myself bankrupt. So the lenders would be happy to in that situation. Look, that the idea is that they have come and declared that look, I have whatever I have, I'm ready to pay. I have nothing more, and that is what I'm declaring. And the lenders, I definitely will understand that he has tried his best and will let him declare as a bankrupt, and it will be discharged from other liabilities. That is what the IBC is envisaging, and that is what we are looking towards it. Now the question comes is that we have found that in many cases, the assets have been alienated to relatives, to family members, to others. Now this is not only unethical, it is absolutely illegal. The point that if you are given a guarantee, you are having an asset, and the moment you feel that your guarantee may be invoked, or after invocation, you are alienating those assets, you can be considered not only unethical, it is a criminal activity. So better you should think before giving a guarantee, that how to what extent you are giving a guarantee, and whether you are giving any, even if you have not mortgaged any property, but the property is still with you, you are still liable. This property will come into the insolvency resolution, individual insolvency process, and that property would be sold and money made good to the lenders. only the guarantor will be left out with the excluded assets which is mentioned in the code. Now the other question is of subrogation, which is another important question, that if the guarantors actually pay to the lenders, they are entitled to claim it from the corporate debtor. This is a question of subrogation. But if one reads thoroughly the aspect of subrogation into the act, it clearly states that the lender has to be paid in full. It is not a part payment, will not entitle a guarantor to get the right of subrogation. That is my feeling. Opinions may differ, but my reading, of course, case laws will decide, but my reading says that the guarantor has to pay in full in order to get his right of subrogation. So, but in any case, the guarantors will possibly not be able to pay in full, or because it is under resolution or under recovery. So, even if the remaining amount, I have great doubts if they can pay in full. But theoretically, let us assume that say there is a debt of 100 crores or 100 rupees, and the recovery or resolution and gives in 50, and the balance 50 is claimed from the personal guarantor. Obviously, no lender will claim 100 rupees from the debtor as well as 100 rupees from the guarantor. Even if it is claimed, if one is received, the other will automatically come down. So theoretically, if the lender has received 50 rupees out of recovery process or from a resolution process, the guarantor is liable to pay the balance 50. Now I am going by a theoretical situation where the guarantor is actually able to pay that 50 rupees. So if he is able to pay that 50 rupees and he pays it to the lenders, then he gets the right of subrogation to the extent of 50 rupees from the corporate debtor. Now if the corporate debtor has changed hands, the ownership has changed, he will go and file his claim with the corporate debtor. Now look it from the point of view of the lender. The lender has already settled this amount. He has got whatever is required. So I think in such a case, if his dues are fully settled, then he will be possibly able to give that money to the corporate debtor to pay off the guarantee. It is absolutely theoretical discussion. In practicality, this might not happen at all because chances of this happening is very, very minuscule. So this is my overall, starting points on these are the issues that why a guarantor should be made to pay after resolution of debt or after recovery. And the second is the subrogation right. Now till recovery, when we used to go and recover, before this IBC, when we used to recover through DRT or SURFACE, then obviously the balance amount remaining unpaid or unrecovered was still made to payable, still payable by the personal guarantor, and everybody accepted that because that was as per the law. Now in the resolution process, this situation doesn't change. If the lender is not able to get resolution of the entire amount, he has to sacrifice certain amount. Then obviously he would have the right to go against the personal guarantor for the remaining amount. Now if the personal guarantor is, obviously if it is not possible for him to pay the full amount, he should come forward and submit all his assets to this process, insolvency process. He can also be an applicant to the process. So that basically he is saying that, look, I am having this much of assets, please take this asset and discharge me. That should be the right way of handling. Once he is discharged, he can do whatever else. He will be not considered as a, a defaulter at all.
I think I agree with Parthaji on that completely. In terms of principles, he has laid it out.
Take it over, Piyush, please.
So in terms of principles, he has laid it out very well. Of course, it's about balancing of interests. So I think right from Monet onwards, which was one of the most advanced cases, the issue arose on what happens to subrogation and why, we are making changes to guarantee terms, right? But subrogation, if you look at Contract Act, is itself a right that could be subrogated, right? That could be waived off under the Contract Act itself. So the section starts with, unless agreed to the contrary. So therefore, if a right could have been subrogated under the Contract Act itself, it was only logical that the subrogation should be allowed for the corporate, even if the corporate debtor's debt is being discharged through a plan. And of course, you have to remember that there was a clear Supreme Court line of judgments which said that in a liquidation, at least, of the corporate debtor, the guarantee survives. I think if I'm not wrong, there was one for MSCB context. There was one Supreme Court judgment clearly, which went into details on liquidation. Given those two principles, of course, the law was not clear at that point of time, but we pretty much took a call that yes, you know, it's a restructuring. It's arguably not a consensual restructuring, but more, you know, more driven by a statute, and therefore, because it comes pursuant to a NCLT order. And therefore, if it's by operation of law, the guarantee should not be discharged, and we should have recourse against the guarantor. What this does is now gives me an effective recourse against the guarantor, and guarantor ideally should be liable for the debt. He knew it when he gave the guarantee. I mean, the basic idea was, you know, I'll take a guarantee from you because if I don't get it from X person, I'll get it from you. If that was the basis of commercial understanding, that commercial understanding should be enforced by the courts as well. And that's exactly what the statute does. I think the key differences today and the challenges that will come when enforcing personal guarantees are slightly different. To my mind, one of the issues, you know, to consider is how do we make the system robust? The experience on avoidance transactions in NCLT in the context of a corporate debtor hasn't been particularly encouraging. Very few judgments so far, and not necessarily in a time-bound manner, unlike a resolution process. The key part when we are going against a personal guarantor would be forensic. You know, it's not like he will have all the assets. So one of your issues from a banker perspective, and you know, Partha sir would know it very well, that one of the key issues will be how well do we know the assets of the guarantor, but particularly a personal guarantor. How well do we know his assets? Is the forensic robust enough to uncover all the assets? Because so far outside IBC regime for sure, whenever we have tried under willful defaulters, etc., to, you know, go after the assets of individuals, so far the results haven't been particularly encouraging, at least from the known cases that we know of. So, you know, there is a key reason to ensure that now the forensic system and the forensic audit is very, very, you know, the process is tightened. And of course, more supervision and more better kinds of terms and more watch is kept on the information being provided by the guarantors if we are to have any teeth in this, you know, in terms of the personal guarantee provisions. So the credit discipline for the guarantor will become important. Like, for example, I recall, I mean, you know, guarantees have been given by holding companies, you know, far exceeding their net worth. From a personal guarantee perspective, also typically personal guarantee commercially was taken, one, to keep the promoter on the hook, two, to ensure a discipline at a lower, you know, at a level of corporate debtor that he will not allow where his personal guarantee is at stake for the person to go into default. If the corporate debtor has already gone into default in spite of that, the stigma of insolvency, if I may use that word, might push him to still have a credit discipline. Of course, as a society, we have to also take a call, and as Partha sir and, you know, and earlier it was being also pointed out, look, the problem from a personal guarantor perspective is twofold. Two key issues. One, he can't give a resolution plan more often than not because of section 29A, which is outside the code. So even if he wants to resolve the debt, and some part of it is a no-fault liability. So one has to be mindful of the fact that if it is a no-fault liability, it turned into an NPA and was an NPA for more than 1 year, which means for 18 months, he tried to do it. It was just a bad business plan. Now we have cases in developed jurisdictions, insolvent people have, you know, people have turned insolvent a number of times and have become very successful entrepreneurs or even presidents and prime ministers, right? We have not seen that in India yet. Personal insolvency was there even before this, but we have to understand that as a regime, we are not used to dealing with insolvency at a personal level. Company level, okay, BIFR and all, we have that experience. In that sense, it is new, and especially the kind of promoters, entrepreneur class that we are talking about. So one has to be mindful that this is used cautiously, though I don't see a choice for banks, you know, but to invoke personal guarantees and proceed in these provisions. COVID has further complicated the matter. Corporate debtors have a you know, moratorium. They can't go in, but I can go against personal guarantor. that presents another unique challenge. Why do you distinguish between these two? And so there are quite a few issues of with the personal guarantee, including DRT as a jurisdiction and access to justice at a personal level, particularly for a small time personal guarantors. When you are referring to the threshold issue, I think that is key to that. I mean, if I'm a very small time guy and I ran a small business and it went bust, do I have to trudge all the DRTs are not in every state also. So one has to be mindful of, how does it work in a DRT? NCLT is still, you would say, okay, NCLT in certain corporate data context, it works. But when personal insolvency goes forward, we'll have to be mindful of the fact of how it works in a DRT context for personal guarantors. I mean, those were the broad ideas. I thought that if you have to balance the debate, how will it work?
Yeah, truly so. Partha sir, what Piyush was also mentioning, I also, resonate the same, that we're still developing jurisdiction as far as insolvency or bankruptcy is concerned. Though we have the Provincial Towns Insolvency Act for a pretty long time, more than 100 years now. But the stigma that gets attached, as you were pointing out, that, okay, come forward, declare it, and okay, be it so, then you can get declared as a bankrupt or as an insolvent person. सर बाकी तो छोड़िए, बेटी का उसका ब्याह ही नहीं होगा, बेटे का भी शादी नहीं हो पाएगा, बाकी छोड़ दीजिए.
That is because it is hardly anything like that has happened, right? But I am pretty confident that one day will come that people will be agreeable to accept that the ethical part of the person who has come forward tried his best to do whatever he can do, and then he has, naturally, if he could not do, he has declared himself bankrupt. I mean, people will start accepting that, and loans will be given to him in further also. In the present context, if somebody is declared as a defaulter, there is no way of he will get a future loan from any bank. But once he declares bankrupt and then he comes forward with another project or something, then lenders will start again lending him. Like Mr. Piyush Mishra said, it has happened in the Western world, it will start happening here also. Because the bank will accept and appreciate the ethical nature that he has come forward, done whatever was possible his best, and then he has said this much and that, nothing more I have. So that will be highly appreciated by the lenders, I believe.
Actually, this whole thing, I was also the president of the Institute of Company Secretaries when this was actually being done. That time also I had felt that 1,000 rupees is a pretty meager threshold. And now when it got notified and when we saw the rules and regulations and we saw the list of excluded assets, a home of 25 lakhs in urban area, a Mangal Sutra the lady is wearing, you will have it as an excluded asset, and things like that, some utensils. I really feel that in the kind of indexation that we are living at, these excluded assets are really doesn't live with the times that we are living in. I think that would also change and be more practical over time. This is just a starting point. Yeah. And since CIRP cannot be done below 1 lakh, so practically it comes down to 1 lakh, the 1,000 doesn't move much, because there is no question of part guarantee. In generally there is no part guarantee. So the entire amount what a lender extends is guaranteed by the personal guarantor. So in practicality, it will be all those cases which are going to CIRP or authorized can go into CIRP will come under this personal guarantee. And this question of trigger was lot of discussed by Justice, retired Justice Mukhopadhyay, and he had come down and said that if it is a case is filed under Section 19 of DRT Act, then a suitable application can be filed and brought to the NCLT to proceed with the personal guarantee process, personal guarantee insolvency process. So where I would like to add in majority of the cases, if not all, but I presume it is all cases, the lenders have filed suit against the personal guarantors in DRT. So that is not at all an issue from the point of triggering at all. So that is already there. The other thing is that lenders have started doing, and I remember I started doing in 2018 itself, is to include, rather exclude the subrogation clause in the resolution plan itself,
and the lenders will preserve its rights
Yes.
to go against the personal guarantor in the resolution plan itself. So both the points which Justice Mukhopadhyay has stated can be well taken care of by the lenders and are being well taken care of lenders. So there is absolutely no issue in triggering it.
Yes, yes. I think in all our plans also we are seeing the same thing. Yes, Piyush, please.
I think so there are 2 points that Partha sir mentions which are interesting and they're both relevant. One, of course, the right of subrogation being, expressly taken away and upheld by NCLT in its judgment that, this is perfectly fine. And the second part, of course, and he had also rightly pointed out, for subrogation, you have to pay the full debt. The typical idea would be he would not compete in liquidation proceedings or insolvency proceedings. I'm hoping that, some wording will have changed to that effect. With the creditor till the full debt is repaid. So contractually, they would have agreed to that very clearly. What we call in a guarantee as typical a non-competition or non-compete language with the creditor. And secondly, that's as far as subrogation is concerned. And secondly, also the idea that any settlement of debt with the corporate debtor would not affect any third-party security, because the plan obviously can't deal with the third-party security issues. We have seen plans where people have said, we want personal guarantees, we want this. And I think creditors have been consistent in almost all cases that they don't want it. It is now, in fact, part of most RFRPs in that sense, that, don't ask us to release any securities of third party. The plan can only deal with the corporate debtor, and that's what we are going to deal with. Because obviously, there is a moral hazard of not going against a personal guarantor. One, the bank mostly, and SBI in this case, deals with public money. So part of the issue is when we are saying a debt has gone bad, and it's backed up by a guarantee, fine. So I have no choice but to resolve the debt, and I'm allowing a resolution of the debt. I can't just liquidate it and create a social disruption for employees, but I need to go against the guarantor to recover as much money as I can, because look, otherwise the depositors will suffer. It's our money in the end that is in the bank, and therefore it has to be looked upon in that context, of how the plan is viewed and why it is important for banks to go after, at least in the big accounts. Let's not, look at it from a retail perspective. I'm not expecting personal insolvency to be used in a retail context. I'm more expecting it to be used in a corporate context where big money is at stake. And that's why, I had referred to the idea that the forensic study and the efficacy of it will matter a lot in terms of tracing of assets, particularly international assets. Because a lot of money, is looted that way. And it becomes important to see that Benami property and offshore property gets caught in the net and is effectively brought back in.
No wonder, I think after IBC, we saw a lot of formation of trusts and family trusts. So I'm sure where you're coming from, we're all kind of mulling over it as to how to trace those assets and how you can break that wheel of trusts and, those complicated structures that people create, as Partha sir was mentioning, to show away the assets that you have with you to your dependent children or dependent parents and grandparents. So yeah, I'm sure with time we'll evolve over this. So I think we've left with a lot of thoughts in our mind. It's churning, and I'm at least finding it very, very interesting to really now further go back to my books, study table, and read all those judgments which Mukhopadhyay sir was mentioning, and understand the other jurisdictions, how it's working. But definitely, India still has to take a lot of it needs a lot of bandwidth to digest the fact that a person has been declared a bankrupt, or a person has been declared a person who has just come out of insolvency. Because Companies Act, say Shuru Karke, Income Tax Act, and a lot of other acts debars them from even becoming directors of a company later on. So which means it seems that you take away the right of doing business from that man just because he's been declared a bankrupt or he's just made some bad business decisions. Partha sir, I only can just request the bankers. I'm not trying to talk on behalf of anyone, but at times we also see that there are few accounts which has gone bad because money has not flown in from the bank at the right time, or rightfully when they needed some expansion, that is the time they did not get sanctioned, or the industry just went burst. Something has happened which is outside the hands of the promoter. So they are known as honest businessmen, in fact, for whom this IBC law had come. Actually, if you see, so the IBC law had come that entrepreneurship should do well. The assets which has got stuck should come to the economy and it should be used more and more. Churning of money should happen, and honest entrepreneurs should get back to the system once again. So I am humbly requesting on behalf of the chamber that we see that sometimes situations are just not in your hands and you fail. You fail in exams, you fail in your business, you fail in life. Marriages are made in heaven, but in spite of that on earth, we are not able to, hold those marriages in spite of being made in heaven. So the businesses are made only in earth. People can go wrong. I'm only saying that at times let the bankers be also mindful that IBC is also to bring back them on the feet. A lot of times I've seen that section 240A, which is made for MSMEs, even there the bankers are a little tight to consider that these are MSMEs. And on behalf of the chamber, I want to say that at least MSMEs should get the due credit which has been given by the law by way of section 240A. So I wish, and I'll end with this positive note, unless Piyush and Partho sir, you have to still mention something, and Vivek sir is also with us. Let's get rolling. We have nothing more to say. In fact, the law is with us. We have to use it judiciously, is what we all can aim for. So Partho sir, 240A is something which I leave it to your bag.
Yeah, yes, I would just like to add one or two aspects which you just built upon. If there are failures, so if we fail in an exam, we should accept our failure and try to do best in the next time, because you cannot go back and go for a second time examination. That doesn't happen. Number one. Number two, if unfortunately you are affected by something which is beyond your control, so, and somebody else has also been able to go through that, then you have to accept that he was more efficient than you. And the idea is an asset should be managed by somebody who is more efficient in managing that asset than with somebody who is unable to manage that asset. So keep that in mind. You have to pull up, the entrepreneurs have to pull up their stocks, ensure that there is sufficient efficiency to take the year along, and also have their own sufficient stakes so that they can still take care of the repayment liabilities when the company corporate debtor is in stress. If that is there, if you don't default, do not default. So you have to build in a sufficient cushion to ensure that you do not default in future. You take care of all sensitivity and ensure that you do not default in future. Improve your efficiency, then obviously you will carry through, you will not default and you will not come across this situation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Piyush, anything that you would like to add? And then we'll go back to Vivek.
No, I think we have already overshot the time, so I would rather wait for, to hear Vivek ji.
Sure. Thank you. Vivek sir, over to you.
Piyush ji, Partho ji, and Mukhopadhyay sir has left us already. But thank you all of you for a very engaging session. Mamta ji, I think, one of the biggest takeaways that I have from today's session is, this was nice, but I think each of these speakers are very powerful speakers. I think you should do a single session with them. Sure. Because I think a lot of questions are unanswered. A lot of questions are on the chat group. I mean, we are getting messages on our WhatsApp and everything. So, Mamta ji, the responsibility lies with you. Sure. I think the banking chair and you can coordinate, and the council for the Subodh ji, aap log coordinate karke, I think you can organize some series, I think separately, because I think Parthoda will probably agree with me. I think he had much more to say than he has said today. I think he could, although he has been very candid and frank, but an interactive session where our members are also, because SBI, what SBI does, other banks blindly follow. Yeah. SBI is a inspirational, motivational for other bankers. And So if we get guidance from SBI, it will more or less be copy pasted with other bankers. So we, and I mean that as a compliment, sir, not in any other. And Piyush ji and Mamta ji, आप लोग से देखिए free advice free मिले nobody mind. हम लोग हमेशा free advice लेने के लिए ready रहते हैं. So
anytime, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure interacting because very interactive audience. I tried to answer what I could in the chat.
I know. But you know, I don't know if Mamta ji mentioned, this event is actually being telecast live on both Facebook and YouTube. And our audiences there have been sending us questions. Plus our members who are on the panel who do not want to write it on the chat, they've been sending us WhatsApp and messages. So this is one. Number two, sir, we've learned a lot. We would request Partho Babu, Piyush ji, if you have any literature, or I don't know whether you are aware, Mamta ji prepares a legal newsletter for us and she circulates to all our members, you know, knowledge sharing. So my request would be to Piyush ji, to Partho Babu, if there is any literature or knowledge sharing that you think is necessary, if you have a document, please share it with us. We will be more than happy. I'm sure Mamta ji would would keep my request and accommodate in our next issue and circulate to our members. Apart from that, sir, many thanks. You know, Partha, for you, I have a request. If you could, I'm sure Mamta ji will be having your coordinates. So Mamta ji, the responsibility is yours to take a bridge between our members so that whatever issues our members are facing, you can, I know I am facing a particular issue, so I will reach out to him separately.
Sure, absolutely, I will do that. Absolutely.
Actually, I knew the person, you know, before lockdown, the person who was in the chair before me. So I will reach out to him separately. But all of you, thank you a lot on behalf of MCCI. You know, great, super, you know, I don't know how many words we can thank you. Your interactiveness, your frankness, your candidness, your knowledge sharing, and above all, giving us so much of your precious time. I know it's a working day. I know you have so many other alternate options available, but yet you have blessed MCCI with this. So thank you very much. And we hope
it was absolutely our pleasure in participating in this webinar.
And we will keep troubling you, sir. We will keep troubling you and we will keep asking you for more of your time. Over to you, Mamta ji.
Thanks, Atan Vivek ji. You've done it all. Let me say it's very difficult and seldom to find Vivek ji in the programs because he himself is a very big businessman and a very avid social worker. I must say that Vivek ji is so well read that he knows entirely what's happening in the world. He's a person who runs a newspaper, so has to be like that. Vivek ji, thanks a ton for your presence, and Piyush, wonderful. Thank you, Partha.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
অনেক কিছু বললে ছোট হয়ে যাব, আপনাকে ছোট করতে চাই না, খুব সময় দিলে।
Mamta ji, हमारे sponsors को भी thank कर दीजिए if they are there. I don't know.
Yes, Vivek.
I forgot that.
Yeah. Piyush, thank you from behalf of MCCI for sponsoring this. Means a lot to us.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's not the word sponsorship, but it's the word, the commitment matters a lot to us.
Every drop counts, Mamta ji, every drop counts. Believe me. Every drop
Yes,
counts.
I understand. Thank you. So we see you all. And I must thank my participants. Thank you all. We touched 400 plus, and even now we are at a very good number. Number doesn't matter. What matters is your intrigued interest in the session. We promise to come back with more. And don't you worry, these email IDs are with the chamber. So we will send the PPT of Piyush. Piyush, can I say that?
No, please.
We'll
Sure.
send the PPT of Piyush and also the recording of this session by tomorrow or day after maximum. I'll send it to all of you who's attended the program. Thank you and good night. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Oripita, thank you for all the support.
Thank you.